I've had a very long labor. I was in labor for 32 hours. So it's April, even though the month's almost over, but I just found out that it's C-Section Awareness Month. And I thought that I would share my birth story because I'm a C-section mom. It was totally unplanned. It was an emergency C-section. And I never shared my story publicly before, so I thought, why not share it, for C-Section Awareness Month? So when I was pregnant with my son, who's almost 3 now, I just had it in my head that I'm gonna have a natural birth. I took a hypnobirthing course. I signed up for this natural birthing room that had a tub where you could give birth in water. I did all the things to prepare for a natural birth, and a C-section was like the furthest thing from my, birth itinerary. And plus, I had a very easy pregnancy. I didn't have any complications, any problems. Everything was smooth. So there was no indication that I would need a C-section. But I was overdue. I remember I got to 40 weeks, and then I got to 41 weeks, and then I finally started having contractions at I was pushing 41 plus 5. The doctor told me look, if you don't have your baby over the weekend, come back and you'll have an induction. And so at that point, I was so ready to have the baby. I was like, okay, I don't want to go past 42 weeks. I'll just come get an induction. And he told me that on a Thursday, and luckily I did start to feel some discomfort Friday night. And then Saturday morning, that's when the real contractions started kicking in. I remember on Saturday morning, I had some cramping. It wasn't something I couldn't deal with. It was some discomfort, maybe some period pains or something. And then it was 10 o'clock in the morning, because I remember looking at the clock, and this is when I had the first contraction that made me bend over. And I was like, okay, it's for real now. And then I was excited. I told my husband. We were at my mom's house because we wanted to be closer to a hospital that I wanted to deliver at, with the natural birthing room and yada yada. And my husband was excited. And I said, okay, look, I have time. It just started. So he went back to our place and he wanted to sterilize the place again and get things ready. It was so in the meantime, my mom was with me during those first contractions while we were at the house. Then he came back. He was always in touch with me, and he came back I think around 4 o'clock that afternoon. And still, I was having the contractions weren't steady. There was nothing steady happening. And my mom was there with me. She was trying to she was telling me to stay in movement. We went for a walk. It started to get really hard. I remember I had one that just took my breath away, where I was outside and I just had to squat. I had to get down because I couldn't walk. So the contractions were getting more and more intense. And my sister came over and my brother-in-law, and it was and they stayed until I think midnight. And still my contractions just weren't stable. And that's when I started to lose track of time and everything, because I remember I had TMI, I had some diarrhea, I was vomiting. It was just my body was going through it. And then I don't remember exactly, but it was some very early in the morning, maybe 2 o'clock in the morning, say 2 or maybe 3 o'clock in the morning. That's when my mom was okay, I think my contractions still weren't stable, but she says, I think it's been a while. I think we need to go to the hospital. So then we went to the hospital, and then they were checking they put the monitor on me and the baby, and they said your contractions are really strong, but I didn't have any opening. And they saw some variations in the heart monitor. They said, unfortunately, we can't put you in the natural birthing room, and we need to monitor you some more. So I was kind of bummed out about that. They said, look, if everything progresses, then you can go to the natural birthing room. So we just need you here for a while. So I was being monitored, and more hours passed. At this point, we're already in Sunday morning. And then I still I was just stuck at 2 centimeters. I had 2 centimeters dilated that I was a week before that. I was walking around with 2 centimeters for for a week. So then they told me, I remember I was going in and out of the shower. My mom and my husband were with me, and they were just trying to support me. They couldn't do anything. They felt so bad because they said I looked so out of it. Oh, and that's another thing. And then I refused the epidural because I was like, sure, this was gonna stabilize and I was gonna be able to go into the natural birthing room. It didn't happen. So at one point I had been over, I think I was like 22 hours in, and they told me, like, look, we need to give you pepperfarine. It's like a muscle relaxant. And they said because my cervix was like swollen, I'm like the contractions, everything was just so tight. They said my cervix isn't opening, and they said when we give you this, then we need to also give you an epidural. I was just like, okay, whatever, like give me the epidural. I had been in pain for so long, I was just like delirious and I was exhausted. I remember they called the anesthesiologist and then he came to me and he was just about to give me the epidural. I like signed the waiver and everything. And then he got like they beeped him to go somewhere else for an emergency. And I already had my mind fixed on that like I was gonna get some relief for the pain. And then he said, oh, I'm sorry, I have to go. I'll be back in 20 minutes. And then I was just like, oh no. In 20 minutes, when you've already been having contractions that long, that seemed like forever. And then they told me he'll be back in 20 minutes or they'll try to call someone else. And I think 10 minutes passed and I was just like, I just couldn't take it anymore. Then I think my husband, he went and like he was telling them like, where's the anesthesiologist? And someone else ended up coming maybe like 15 minutes later. And so they gave me the epidural and I couldn't believe that I didn't have to feel all that pain for all that time. And even if it didn't completely numb everything, but which I think is a good thing, but it wasn't as intense as before. Like I did have some like sensation. Like I remember when I had to attempt to push eventually, I did have some sensation, but it wasn't anything compared to what I was experiencing before. So I got the epidural and the papaferine, and then I like really did open up. I went from like 2 to 5 like instantly, and then a few hours later from 5 to 8. And this hospital, it's a shout out to Tel Shomer or Shiva Hospital in Ramat Gan in Israel. Like it really is. The staff was amazing, and I like how they like incorporate like East and West. They give you like reflexology and acupuncture like while you're in the hospital. So I had an acupuncture twice while I was there, and then at 8 centimeters. And they told me my contractions kind of stalled. So then they gave me pitocin to bring my contractions back. And what I understood later on from medulla is that this can often cause like the baby to get in the wrong position. The contractions kind of like push the baby kind of artificially into the cervix, and so he really did. He got stuck, and he was stuck there for a while. And they told me to push. They tried to move him, and he also started his heart rate wasn't regular. So this is when they were starting to get worried. They said, look, your water broke a while ago. Yeah, my water broke when I was in the labor room. I remember I was embarrassed. I was like, oh no, I just peed on myself because I had already vomited and pooed. And then I was like, at least I did that in a bathroom. And I was like, but now I'm peeing on myself. And then I realized it was like my water breaking. But yeah, so anyways, they said your water broke a while ago and your baby's like stuck in his heart rate and everything. There was a point that like really scared my husband and my mom because they were like the baby's heart rate is like irregular, and so they pushed me on the side and they started shaking me. So this was really scary, and they were like, "I'm so sorry, like you did all of this work, but we have to take you to get an emergency C-section." And I feel like my mom and my husband were more bummed out than me because I was so exhausted that I was just like, I don't care if they just pull the baby out my nostril at this point. I just wanted it to be over. I just wanted to have a healthy baby in my hands. Like afterwards, I was disappointed, but at that moment when they told me, I didn't care. And they said, your husband can be with you. It's not going to be, it's just local anesthesia. You'll be awake the whole time. So then I remember them prepping me, and then my husband, I saw him in the surgery room with like the scrubs and everything and the mask, and I was there. I did have like some reaction to the medication because they gave me some, I think it was the anesthesia, and then I vomited, and then they gave me something else, and then it was okay. And yeah, and the C-section was so quick. I feel like 15 minutes and we were done. And I did kind of feel like I had so many mixed emotions afterwards because on one hand, I was just like, I don't believe I went through all that. And I got to 10 centimeters dilated and I ended up having a C-section still, especially because in my mind, like I don't know, my sister had a natural birth and my mom had natural births and my cousin, like, it's just like I kind of just compared myself to, I thought I was just going to be like everyone in my close family that they had natural births, and I thought it would go the same, but and I kind of had some like feelings about, I'm like, what's wrong with my body that it just didn't go that way? But I digress. So that was on one hand, I felt like I went through all that just to get a C-section. But on the other hand, I was just like, man, I didn't even have to suffer. I wish I would have known in advance that he would get stuck because I wouldn't suffer all these hours. It could have been over in 15 minutes. The C-section was super quick. It was painless. You do feel like some slight pressure. Like I did feel them pulling him a bit. I guess because he was stuck in in the bone there in the pelvis. And I asked him, is everything okay? They were like, yeah, everything's fine. I remember they pulled him out and we didn't hear crying immediately. And me and my husband were like, is everything okay? They were like, he's fine, everything's okay. And then we heard him crying. And then we looked at him and we looked at each other and we started crying. We were like a bunch of crybabies. Like at that moment when my husband took my son and then he gave him to me, I felt like I would do it a million times over. Like I can't even explain the feeling that like when you just see that you just they put your baby in your arms. And after I felt like after I saw that my son was like healthy and he was here finally, that's when I felt like I just passed out because everything after that is like blurry. I remember my husband, he said I'll be with him every step of the way, so he went and did all the checkups. He was with him the whole time. And then I went into the recovery room, and then we went back to the room where I stayed the night. And that's when my husband came back and my mom, they were with our son. I remember I wasn't even aware enough. Like I was still recovering. I didn't think about food and feeding or anything. And then my mom just kind of took my son and put him on my boob and he started nursing. Like he tried to latch on my right breast and he didn't latch. And then she tried to put him on my left and he did immediately, like and for a while he did have like a site preference, which like sorted out later. Anyways, I was so happy that at least breastfeeding went smoothly because breastfeeding, like this was something that I was probably more like worried about because I heard so many different experiences, and that went smoothly. And labor, which I naively thought was like a piece of cake, like I said, because my mom had like 4 kids naturally, my sister had 3, my cousin's first labor was like, easy. So I was just like, oh yeah, like how hard can it be? And I'm like the one that's like, hold my beer. Like it was really hard. It was a hard labor. So that was my C-section story. They did a really good job. The scar is like really small and not very visible. It's like they do these internal stitches here, and then I had tape on the front, so it healed very well. And at the end of the summer, I think it was August, I made a video about how how I'm prepping my body for a second baby, and how we're getting ready, all the things that I'm doing. So I can announce that I'm pregnant again. Opa! I'm very pregnant. I'm at the end of my 3rd trimester now. I'll make a separate video about my first pregnancy versus my second pregnancy and how it's different with a toddler and everything. But this time around, I'm not going to have such a rigid birth plan. I am going to attempt to have a VBAC, a vaginal birth after a C-section, but I'm not going in like, I'm going to go in more flexible so I'm not shocked by anything. And one of the things that I did do to prepare for this pregnancy is that I met with a doula. We did something called like ibut leda. It translates to labor processing, where she explains what happened the first time around. They gave me a lot more clarity than the doctors gave me. Like we went over my like surgical report and all the hospital. Like she told me step by step like what happened, what it could have been done differently. And we met up again, her and my husband, for different movements and everything that we can do to ensure that the baby's in the right position. So I feel a lot more empowered and confident now, but I'm still going into labor with an open mind that things can happen. It's dynamic, so I won't, feel disappointed by anything. So I'll keep you guys posted on that. And yeah, like I said, I just wanted to share my birth story because it's C-section awareness month, and I was like, why not? I'll share my C-section story. And if you're a C-section mom, I'd love to hear your story. If you were delusional like me and thought birthing wasn't going to be that hard, you can share your story too. Thank you. I'll keep you guys posted.
And it's a ticket talking Mazda for the biggest. That's a comma and a comma and a comma. Gotta get it, get it.
And it's a ticket talking Mazda for the biggest. That's a comma and a comma and a comma. Gotta